to people as to who I am as an artist, and my thoughts and my creation, and as well as I said, I grew up without knowledge of my own society, but over the years, we traveled across North America. We traveled events that were all kinds of Native events, different types of Indian events, and I have certainly a much richer knowledge as to who I am now. My brother passed away in the fall, and that really put a hiatus on our film for a while because I got to spend 3 months with him before he passed away. And it was a golden opportunity. So we always say about getting knowledge from people before they get too old. We laughed, we joked, we cried, we got all our family pictures straight, and me and him, my brother, we got all our stories straight, and that's the main thing, right? Because growing up with brothers and that, we were always close. And you can see from the imagery, the hunting and all, and I had another brother that died in 1970, so that's the one that changed my dad's life. But we still are a very close family. And my sister has taken over the matriarchal role, and she's the one that held my brother when he passed away. So it's a challenge to open up your life like that, right? But at the same time, I think we came out with a beautiful film that embraces a lot of energy, tells a lot of stories, and hopefully it makes you think a bit when you go away from here, just to the things that you've seen, heard, and listened to, and an example of who we are as a people, but also how wonderful a gifted filmmaker can bring those stories to life. And I think that's what's happened here.
Also, just on a point about going back to how the origination of the film, how the film originated. When you're going out as a documentary filmmaker too, looking for a documentary that you're going to be working on for 3 years, 4 years sometimes, you have to see whether that story is going to be universal, not regional. So you have to go in, and I often say to people who I'm making a film on, like this film is about you, but it's not about you, because if it was only about you, sorry to say, unfortunately, it wouldn't be a universal story. So you have to go in and you have to look and find, to make sure that the story has legs, as they say, that it isn't just about a person, that it has issues, that it becomes a much bigger, thematically layered film that will touch people all over the world, because this film goes. My films are shown in about over 70 film festivals around the world, and so you always have to make sure that everybody, it will appeal to people around the world, and they will understand it and identify with it and feel for it. And a lot of that has to do with emotion. Emotion is the most important thing, especially when you're editing. Humor is very, very important, and I always look for any humor that I've shot. It has to come in, because that's what connects people to. Humor is one of the things immediately that will wake people up in a movie, for instance, or when you laugh, you automatically become engaged again to that. You attach yourself again to that film, and to that person. So that's really, really important. And the emotion, there's 3 beats of emotion in there. There's, I don't remember them specifically, your father's death, and then in the rooms there's an emotional, and I can't remember, there's another when you get emotional somewhere. But anyway, so I look for those things, and also for the humor. So there has to be what we call beats, and I look for them in editing. And I ended up editing this myself because we didn't have a huge budget for this one. I usually work with Christopher Darlington, who did look at the film after. He's a great editor. But I grew up editing too, because my father was a documentary filmmaker with the National Film Board. He trained, I was in Montreal in 1967, Expo 67, 68. He trained under Colin Lowe, who was a great, one of the greatest documentary filmmakers in the world. So I grew up in the editing room, cutting when I was 10, 11 years old, on a moviola, cutting film by hand. All of that, I don't know how I got into that story, but anyway, I guess about making films, I always wander, sorry. But.
Stan, I had a question for you as well. Ken is talking about how the film kind of evolved and became something that he wasn't originally expecting. What were your expectations like when he first approached you about the film? Did it go the way that you expected, or did you find that on your end there was an evolution as well?
oh, this just tumbled out of control, right? Because, you know, I always look at myself like, yeah, my story of where I come from and how I got into being an artist, but also the skill sets that was gifted to be able to take that piece and come up with something like this in the end. That's not something that I just woke up one day or I read a book and I learned. A lot came from my father, but we had to pioneer how this was done. So there's tools that we use that you don't buy. Some tools we had to make or adapt, and this is you learn how to get to those points, right? But at the film, and I never seen until we seen the first rough cut. I didn't know what any of my family said, and it's like, oh God, he's going to talk to Marilyn John. What is she going to say, right? Or what is Susan going to say? But you see the strong imagery that those people present, and it makes you feel good and warm in here that they've done that. But at the same time, I didn't know the impact I had. My working late at night, working in the house, I didn't know that they were all doing that. They would sneak around, right, and not let you know what they're at. But you see how it embedded in them a sense of place and a sense of being and a sense of pride in me, which surprises me after. You know, the amount of things that I've done in my life has always been, like I said, getting things done, but it was never say, hi, you know, I'm the native guy over here getting this happen. But at the same time, I always carry pieces with me. This piece I wear was one my dad created, and it's the Iroquois Confederacy. The 2 rings I have on when Dad first made work, he was an iron worker. He owned part of a steel erection company, but he used to work late at night, and these rings are made out of the stainless steel nuts that hold buildings together. So when my dad first started crafting things, we always supported him. We never know where it was going to take us. So in this film, you get to see how all of those things come together as a family life, and how we are able to present our stuff and our work, and who we are as a people, and what we believe and what we think, as well as being accommodating, openness, and like Susan will tell you any kind of story you need here, and she can talk and talk, but she's very knowledgeable of what she's saying.
I want to make sure we have time for some questions from the audience. Did anybody have any questions you wanted to ask of Stan or Ken?
I do.
Yeah.
So it's not so much a question. It's just that I've seen your other work, Ken, and I really like your style. And it was interesting that this storytelling, do you feel that stands, for want of a better, non-white privileged term, that his storytelling style influenced the way that you told this story this way? Because it felt, it felt like it just felt, it felt different. And I do know.
Oh, they all have to be different. I mean, they're all shaped for the person you're making them about.
Exactly.
They have to be.
I'm just saying that, previous subjects or stories were about white artists, really, right? And so now we have somebody who's, for want of a better term, indigenous, is going to, do you feel that really impacted your story?
I'm just.
The question, you just said that your subject always impacts your story.
Yeah, so it's just, I'm just somebody documenting people's stories. And it doesn't matter who it is, or I just go out. I did have some pushback, if you want, trying to get at this question, because I am a white guy. And so I did have pushback, yes, about making a film about an indigenous person. I got pushbacks from funding agencies, from a network, and I found it very, very insulting, because I just it's like I'm not capable of making a film about somebody without being prejudiced, which is kind of insulting, am I not allowed to make a film about an Ukrainian person or anybody else in the world? I only have to make films about white people or white middle-aged man. That would be my topic for the rest of my life. I found that really, really insulting, It's like, I'm just going and asking questions and making a film about whatever the subject is, and I am not influencing it. I'm going to learn. I mean, and that's why I love writing books, and that's why I love making films, is because from every project that I do, the research and the learning is really inspiring. And the idea and the freshness of it is what is like so exciting, you know, like, and that's probably why I work on 3 or 4 projects at a time, because I like the ideas, but I don't like doing them. I don't like carrying them out. You know, so you get an idea and you're excited and you're researching, you're like, wow, I'm learning all this stuff, it's so good. And then you're like, oh fuck, I gotta do this now. I gotta like spend 3 years making this, you know, or with a book with Blackstrap Hako, 15 years it took me to write that book. So, you know, I'm just a guy making films about people.
So, Stan, how did you feel about a white middle-aged guy doing this, your story, right? Like, doing your story about the...
Also, it wouldn't have been done.
Well, I think Kenneth had, along this line, when we first start chatting, I think he started learning right away. And he was open to the knowledge transfer that we were giving him, and taking it to heart that this had to be an important thing that was told. Whether it's timely or not, I'm not sure if this is timely, but I think there's so many things going on in the world these days that, you know, how do you embrace a culture and part of a society that has been, as Marilyn says, you know, close to being exterminated, how close it came to be, but how we've been resilient enough. And we talk about 7 generations, and it's looking back on the 7 generations before you, but how do you prepare the world for the next 7 generations? We're lucky if we can do 2 generations ahead, right? As you think and plan what you're doing to the world and what you're doing to life and that. But I think he was very good at capturing the moments and weaving them into the story. That was the important part to me, which surprised me in the end when all of this came around, and there's so many different facets to it. But just like any good novel or any good films, even and the top films, there's stories that need to be told, and how do you weave that into one thing? So when people are through, when you're through watching the film and you come out, what sense do you guys come out with? I mean, you've seen a lot of stuff in this film. How do you carry that forward? One thing we did, so I was in one of my lives. So I was chair of Arts and Health for a number of years, right? 7 years, I think. We sat at a national conference at Canada Council for the Arts, and we were talking about reconciliation, the documents that have been put out there. How do we address them? And so we had a presenter come in, and I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but I think there was one Native guy that did a lot of teaching, but we also had the girl that was there at OCA and talked about the things that went on at that thing. So in the end of the day, so we helped put all this together, and we explained it to all the funders. So Canada Council, the CPAF group, is Canadian Public Art Funders. So it's usually the chairs and the CEOs and maybe a couple program officers, depending on the size of the organization, get to attend this meeting, and you discuss how everyone is doing on a national level. But so through that document, when it came out, we said, well, how do we address it? And somebody asked, he says, well, can I get the shortened version of it? And he said, well, that 100-page document you got, that is the shortened version of it. Because this is a couple thousand-page document, really. But anyhow, at the end of the day, they all left, and they all had an actionable item that they were going to take back to their provinces to address and incorporate Indigenous knowledge into it, whether it be board members, whether it be committees that they looked to. A couple of them had elders committees, but it was opening up the willingness to hear that side of the story. And amongst that, don't get me wrong, we also had other nationalities there. We had some people from Brazil come in to do. We had a black fellow that came in, and he says, "You're not telling my story because you don't know what my story is." And they all sat back and they said, well, no, we don't. So to me, it opened the horizons a lot for public funding in Canada as to how we move forward and be more immersed about the richness of the societies that are around us, and then we accept them and showcase them when we can. So it was a really nice ending to all of that. And it's nice now to be in this position of being able to finally, after all the years I've done of public work, that I can finally say, well, this is me. Because I never did my work. I always put it on the back burner saying that I don't want any perceived conflict of interest in anything I'm doing. And, don't get me wrong with the rooms. I spent 14 years on the board of directors of the rooms. I'm a founding board member there. 2 years before the rooms opened, I was brought on as a board member. So I contributed greatly to what went on there. And you're proud of the fact that it's an institution today, even though it has Rhodes has always had growing pains. And I think there's an ability or an opportunity to address any misdoings or wrongdoings and bring them forward and work with the societies that you did impact and make it better than it was before even. Things are always about change. Things always grow. Things always change. And I said in the film, the narrative of younger people coming up, they grew up in a different society than I grew up because there's so much more influences on young people. Right now, we're struggling to keep young people on a straight road, if you will. There's all kinds of influences out there. But how do we set them on the path that leads them down a road of not necessarily what would you call goodness, but makes them a better person? And so we all want to contribute to society in one shape or form or another. So I think this is a good opportunity to it. But like I said, after all those years of doing it, my work has always been on the back burner. I was doing little things, but I was not doing the impactive work. When I look at like Billy Gautier's work, when I look at the piece he created for the rooms there, I says, wow, that's a fabulous thing. Look at how big it is. Look at how impactful it is. But, as you always say, size doesn't always matter. But sometimes it does when you got something that's that big and it tells that kind of story. So like I said, this is only one part of what this work is going to be. If you saw in the film, there's 2 bears. Not mentioning the one that was finished, but that's my own collection. But there's 2 of these big guys, and I'm working on a piece that's about 7 feet long that will be my size of installation work. And I've never pieced pieces together before, so this is an opportunity to do that. I know I'm way off track, but that's it.
That's great. We've got time. Yeah.
I actually have a question about your work. So I found it fascinating that, your father was also an artist, and clearly you learned a lot from your father how to do this kind of work. But when you look at when you get a piece of whalebone or antler, whatever the medium is, you learn from your father how to carve. But do you see, if you looked at that piece of whalebone and did you see this bear? How does that work for you? How do you know that piece of whalebone is going to turn into this bear?
Well, sometimes you do, yes. And that is probably one of the most asked questions I've got, is that, how do you see this? And sometimes it has to do with in here, the touch and the feel. Now, I wanted bears out of this, but it also allowed me to make bears out of it. So it was like a give and take to that size of that piece of whale vertebrae. Now, whale vertebrae is really hard to get nowadays. It's virtually impossible, right? But I was given the opportunity, so I have made pieces that I've used natural form and natural shape to see something in, and then help that come out. But there's other pieces I've made that I've had to go in and find that piece. And it's created a creativity to an effect, but it's still seeing something that's naturally within that carving or that piece of raw material. And whether it is antler, sometimes it's coloring. I've had pieces of antler when you cut them open and you look and you see natural colors, which most times is dried blood within the antler, that, this would look great like that, or look at the shadowing, or you can make the face of it. And if you look at the pendant he's wearing, that's made from a whale tooth.
Stan
But-
gave me this at the premiere, everybody.
But he's got
It's a bear.
He's got a different coloring around the face, so it made the center of it's a tooth. So in the center is I don't know what you call it, the pulp, and the tooth, and then the enamel on the outside. They're 2 different colors, so that lended very well to doing that. So you see when you start carving away that you see it come out. So I said, well, I could attack it and make that one, and then I made Kelly one, but it's not made out of the tooth. It's made out of antler. But that was something that again, the coloring led to what you wanted to do. Sometimes you can make it work, and it's really tough sometimes to make it fit in with the carving. But yeah, a lot of time you do see something, or you're invited to see something. I learned from my dad, but I also have a box my grandfather carved. A box that my grandfather carved, he's like a cigar box. And he did a geometric design on the top of it. Now, my grandfather was wounded in the war, and he couldn't get around very well, so he tinkered with things in the house. I have my uncles are creative. One of them is Duffy Wilson, who was a tremendous stone carver. Everybody in my three brothers and sisters married 3 brothers and sisters in my family. So mom and dad and so all of us cousins all look alike, but we all have gifts. I can't believe how many of my cousins are creative people, and so is that genetic? Maybe, right? But at the same time, but you got to put yourself and have the freedom enough to be able to do that and be in a space that say, I can take time to do that. You know, and I'm probably amongst the unfortunate artists that we have to have jobs so that we can do what we want to do as an artist. So I do have an income that's supplied on other places, but it's that woman that's in that film that supported me and gives me the opportunity to be creative because she sees something special. And so she supports me too. We own a business and that helps supply that, but everything's work. And there's so much work goes into being creative now. It's just such a big challenge to find that time and space.
Well, thank you so much for coming up and talking with us. Thank you for your questions and for coming to watch. Big round of applause again for Stan and Ken. And lots more screenings throughout the week, including one that I'm going to run away to probably right now upstairs. So thank you again so much for coming and chatting with us. And,
thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Sure.
We'll pick it up. We'll pick it up.